Good evening and welcome to the Spice Route. Tonight's discussion will be based on the question, why are we undressing? So this undressing is not something we will discuss solely from a religious perspective as the result of reaching out to something forbidden. We are doing this lesson to highlight a severe illness, a serious problem, both socially and sociologically. Therefore, we will come to this point. A woman that is covered has a representative meaning all around the world. To those who say, well, I'm a young person, what representation are you talking about? I don't know anything. Am I a representative of Islam? The answer is that this is not a romantic, enthusiastic sentence we're saying. In the noble Quran, Allah Almighty has given you the duty of caliphate with the faith He has granted and bestowed upon you. All Muslims living on earth are representatives of this caliphate. Therefore, those who do not carry out this representative duty will see the problems they will face in their lives towards the end of their lives, and this will peak in their children. This is why we are seeking the answer to the question, why does a person undress? Because you are all Muslims. Moreover, there are 3 questions our friends from America asked us. One of them was this: why do the women here in Turkey wear such revealing clothing, and why do they wear so much makeup? Because in the West, in Europe, for example, if you are not walking on a popular street, if you are on a normal street in a normal city, if there is no special festival and it's not a Saturday, because in capitalism, you work 5 days, on Saturday you meet with a man or a woman, you spend the night together and rest on Sunday. That is the system. If it's not such a night, people in the West don't walk around this naked. In that case, besides addressing the topic religiously, we also need to understand it sociologically. If individuals representing Islam are not covering their heads, but the degree of immodesty they are reaching surpasses even the sin of uncovering the head, then we need to know, what did we do so terribly wrong to arrive at this point? We need to address this both with the anthropology of human history and the current sociological reality of humanity. The reason, let me express a few more things. Every 5 years in Turkey, we see clothing shortening by 5 centimeters each time. This is no longer a topic only to be addressed by religious scholars, because we have surpassed America and Europe in this matter. There are a few topics in which we surpassed America and Europe. One is internet usage. We passed them in that. Another is wearing revealing clothing. We surpassed them in these matters. If this surpassing is a rebellion against something, in other words, if you're saying, enough already, let's be liberated, and if you have combined freedom with nudity, then congratulations, we are heading back to the time before Common Era. And there we will face the Greek style of nudity and encounter Africa's truly underdeveloped communities. Because every community in human history that prefers to undress has scientifically and academically been defined as ignorant. In Europe, we mostly see that nudity comes to the forefront in sculpture and, in a way, in painting during the Renaissance period after the Greeks. Now, the answer to the question of why the statues made in Greek mythology are naked is this. If something is undressing, there are 2 possibilities. Either it is ignorant, or it is something that exists above both ignorance and wisdom, meaning it is a god. There is the belief that only gods do not have clothing. The one who is obliged to wear clothes is the human. If a human is giving up clothing, there are 2 paths. Either they are seeking their freedom on the path to becoming divine, so on the path to becoming a god, or They are expressing a great sign of their great ignorance. And there they want to equate themselves with God in order to cover themselves. This is not our understanding of God. It is not our understanding of Allah Almighty. But what I'm trying to explain is that the whole world knows the Creator has commanded humans to wear clothing. In Christianity, in Judaism, and in all the religions of the world, there are dress codes. Because since Prophet Adam was punished, because he fell from a level of consciousness, the sign of that fall is nudity, although it is also worth mentioning this. You will hear it in the life of the Messenger of Allah. They were not sent into the world completely naked. Our mother Eve was sent to earth in a coffin. Our Prophet Adam was sent with the necessary coverings given to him. So these people did not walk around naked on earth. Their children did not walk around naked either. But as a result of the story told, people have come to this point. There are some anthropological pagans. They say, since the Creator sent humans from heaven completely naked, and if I come to this world naked from my mother's womb, then that must be how he wants me, and my appearance must have no importance for him. This is an extreme statement, but this is how it is in the subconscious of their acceptance. And it is something that has been labeled as ignorance by the entire world. For example, today in Italy, at the Vatican, depending on how busy it is, there are 2 or 3 security guards at the door of those whose job is to look at the knee level of women. You cannot enter a church in the Vatican with a skirt above the knee. You also cannot enter with your head uncovered. This is not something unique only to our mosques. Therefore, in the way a nun dresses, or in what Jews wear on their heads, and in the chador worn by Jewish women, covering is the equivalent of consciousness and knowledge. Undressing is either ignorance or a deviant divine view. One may ask, how can you become divine by undressing? This is what the man says. Does the Creator, he says, have clothing? We say no. You don't know, I don't know. I mean, for us, there's no such thing. You can't compare it with matter. So what does paganism do? First, it turns the Creator into stone, and then it attributes to that stone the things it knows. Now let's say I'm going to make myself an idol from this napkin, or from this dough. Now you think you've heard this for years. Has anyone seen God? No. The God narrative is beyond human, and he sent humans to earth, and he decides everything. And while making these decisions, he is not in need of anything. Then this means being naked. Now you might say, how ridiculous. But let me tell you, according to all Christians, angels are female, and God is the Father, Jesus is the Son. This shouldn't sound strange to you. Therefore, if a man walks around completely naked in a place in which, where did we see that? In Rome. In Rome, emperors would walk around completely naked in their own private quarters. That was a display of divinity, a visual form of divinity according to themselves. But outside, they'd say, God is the one who hides himself, and they would wear their clothing. Do we see this among the pharaohs of Egypt? No. It exists in their inner world, but not in the outer world, because in the outer world, throughout history, a person's clothing has determined their status, quality, awareness, and style. If a person has lost this, then, after a while, what they wear begins to direct them. Therefore, we will come to our children, our daughters, and our sons, because in the order of the verses of the Quran, there is an important concept, and we will get to that. Our men, too, are currently at a point where they have stepped outside the conditions brought by Islam regarding clothing, with their shorts, their outfits, their tight pants, and so on. They don't have a process of deification, but they do have a process of rebellion through ignorance. Now here comes the question. What are you rebelling against? Right? What are you rebelling against? Or are they aware of it? Are they doing it consciously, or are they just reviewing it as a form of popularism, as fashion? If this is fashion, then nudity has never been fashion in the world. Only in 1960 did the miniskirt trend appear. It came out in Europe, in England, and those who followed this fashion were always a segment of society, the hippies. Never has an elitist professor or an elitist knight, a baron, walked around in such clothing, nor has his wife. In history, the one who wore the shortest clothes in the British royal family was Diana, and they killed her anyway. This is another issue, but I'm connecting it here. So the woman who wore the shortest wore below the knee, and even that was called short, because everywhere in the world, a conscious person dresses, an ignorant person undresses. Because when we see a naked tribe among the African tribes, we understand that they are sociologically ignorant communities, and there is no sociologist who says otherwise. So before we even come to religion, we need to know this. Evaluating someone based on their clothing might not be the right action, but your clothing says something about you. If you have nothing to be told about you, then you have no style, because every person with a style has a story to be told inside. Either they have read or written or learned, something is accumulated. They have a style, and that gives them a status, and that status is reflected on them. Therefore, if you're saying fashion is a commodity that helps a person in the journey of satisfying their pleasures in their daily life, then that person has also become commodified. The person has become part of that commodity. But if a person has a belief, a lifestyle, a national view, whatever you call it, if they have a mindset that forms all of these, then in the clothing choices they make, they have filters. For example, let me tell you this. If what is in them is not knowledge, but ambition, jealousy, hatred, anger, if they have become someone who wants to obtain something as fast as possible, then, since the noble Quran declares them lower than animals, then undressing becomes quiet and natural style, because for the style that corresponds to anger, jealousy, and hatred, there is no suitable clothing. What I'm trying to say is this. We say pigs are creatures without jealousy, right? But pigs are not creatures of anger and grudge at the same time. A bad trait exists in an animal. One has jealousy, one has anger. The anger, jealousy, hatred, slander, lies, and so on that belong to the commanding self. There is no single animal on earth that holds all of these bad traits together. Only the human can have this. This is why, when all of them come together in a person, the commanding self becomes lower than the animal. Because the pig does feel jealousy, but it is not an angry animal either. It doesn't feel anger toward you for no reason. Its bad trait is jealousy, but it does not have the other traits of the commanding self. They have not all come together. The one in which all come together is the commanding self, and that is the human being. If that human is going to fall below the animal, then, because there is no clothing suitable to that style, they're going to have to undress. Therefore, we must know this. Dear young people, you may not be aware. I'm not saying you are below animals, But I'm saying that a person's reading, writing, lifestyle, values they believe in, their location, their political view, and so on. These create a character in a person. To that character, other things like their profession is added, and you will ultimately make your choices according to this. What is this like? For example, let's say you are someone who doesn't like eating meat. You've grown up your whole life, your mother and father raised you as a vegetarian, always eating plants, vegetables, etc. So you come from a family like that. Then you go to a new city. Do you dare say, in this new city I've come to, there's a big trend of eating meat. It's fashionable here to eat meat. Let me start eating meat. You don't. You say, my friend, there's no meat in my genetics. Or the opposite. There's no greens in my genetics. I can't get full without meat on the table. Do you start eating sushi just because it's trendy now? No. Because you look for what's inside you at the table. You look for what's inside you among your friends. You seek that which is within you. That's why you are responsible for making yourself a better person. As you go on your journey of disciplining yourself, your friends are shaped by what you add to yourself. A man who drinks in the pub every night, when he repents and gives up alcohol, why does he distance himself from those friends, and why do they distance from him? Because a trait that belonged to you has left you. So now you can no longer share the same table, the same conversation. If you don't like football, you don't want to sit down at a table where football is being discussed, because it doesn't attract you, because it's not in you. And so this is what I'm trying to say. Dear sisters and brothers, there must have been such a thing in you that has now been lost. So much so that your mental world that could form a character, a style, and a fashion sense has also disappeared. And so you can't find a product to buy. You go to buy something, there's nothing in you. Then, while looking for something that has been presented to you, yourself inevitably comes to the point in which you say, then I must show something. There is nothing. Since there is nothing inside, I must show something. What can I show? What remains is only my body as a commodity. This remains as the problem of the commodification process. In the 80s of Turkey, there were important figures who were explaining the danger of the commodification process, both in their conferences and in their books. And they were stating that this would lead people to nudity. The most secular group would also say this: we drink alcohol, we don't pray, but we won't let our wives wear pants, they would say. Those men on the streets never allowed their wives to wear pants throughout their lives. He wouldn't allow his wife to wear a headscarf, but he also wouldn't allow her to wear pants. Because there was a consciousness metaphor. Now the commodity has arrived. There is no equivalent, so you have to undress. That's why I'm trying to explain this. The secular group's state of wearing revealing clothing and the religious group's departure from overcoats and those wide, loose clothes is a sign of that void. So it means that this girl of ours, or this brother of ours walking around in tight pants, or this guy in shorts, has got something deleted. There is no corresponding file. A question arises. While all this is happening, especially when women's rights, women's freedom, and the commodification of women are being discussed, how is it that we're seeing the exact opposite sociological movement? For years, they've told us, you are covering women. We are not covering them. It is Allah Almighty's command. They said, you speak this way because you want to take away the free rights of women. Okay, now put 100 girls walking around naked in the street in front of us. We will ask them 5 simple questions. Simple. It is seen that they cannot answer. A community that liberates the level of consciousness through clothing, a community that claims to achieve freedom by removing this clothing, has released the woman into the street as a visual show material. Did this community or those who tried to explain this dress their own children in the same clothes? For example, every person who talks about women's liberation made this speech in the heaviest and most elaborate clothing. Why didn't you appear in shorts and a bustier or whatever while talking about this? Because you know that if a speaker speaks like that, they won't be taken seriously in front of the people. I'm asking, in the past, a woman served as prime minister in Turkey. Whether you voted for her or opposed her, do you accept this woman giving a press statement in a swimsuit or a bikini as a prime minister? You might say that I'm going to extremes. Well, why? This is life, freedom. What you're really saying there is this. This woman represents the Republic of Turkey. We can't accept such a thing. Oh, really? You impose dress codes when representing the Republic of Turkey. But when it comes to representing humanity, representing Allah Almighty, the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, Hazrat Fatima, Hazrat Aisha, you apply the criteria of freedom in clothing. Let the brothers take off their ties then. Why don't they go to Parliament in t-shirts? Let them go in t-shirts, shorts and flip-flops. A man works on legislation for 16 hours. On top of that, he wears a tie. Take it off, brother. Because we are all lying about something we all know the opposite of. This is a lie. From the other side, you say, well, he wore a tie, but it didn't match. She wore this, it didn't match, etc. We know, and they know, the type of clothing worn reveals what's inside a person. If there isn't anything inside, they have to walk around naked. There's nothing within. Because when a person feels like a representative, do they pay attention to how they walk, sit, and speak? Yes, they do. Have you thrown that sense of representation aside by saying, I'm not a representative, I don't care? You have. But then the same woman sits somewhere and says, but I'm a mother. Then the only thing you rejected in that representation was Islam. And I'm telling you, if you are undressing because you rejected Islam, don't be ignorant and don't fall into the trap of ignorance. Do it dressed. If you do it by undressing, Europeans and Americans make fun of you. No, if you're doing this as a liberation movement, are the criteria that define your freedom only your reproductive organs? For example, an African woman did something remarkable a couple of months ago. In the middle of America, she went out to give a speech without wearing anything on top. They said, you can't speak like this. She said, if it's freedom, it's freedom. Let me tell you the point which freedom has reached. The Olympics opening ceremony was held in France last year. A female athlete was trying to participate wearing a headscarf. I don't know which sport exactly, whether it's religiously appropriate or not is a different matter. She said, I will join the walk with a headscarf. The French government Olympic Committee met and said, this is a symbol. Thank you. Yes, it is a symbol. Therefore, you cannot participate. Then a male athlete comes and says, "Do we have to wear pants or shorts? I want to join this walk wearing a skirt." The Olympic Committee meets and says, "Yes, this is personal freedom." Are we surprised? No. This is what we are saying. With our appearance, our clothing, our ladies' headscarves, and I wish our men would wear them too, with our gentlemen's turbans, we are representatives of something. All of us Muslims, we represent something, and we represent it against disbelief. Another aspect to mention is, just as people's nakedness is an indicator of their ignorance, the more naked you make a man walk around, the more mental chaos he experiences. That's why all torture is done naked. If you want to humiliate a man, to drive him mad and make him give up on himself, the first rule of torture is to strip him. No one is tortured with clothes on. First, you strip him, and then you humiliate him. You walk him through rooms and humiliate him. This was a torture method. Now, this method of torture has become clothing, fashion, and freedom on my streets. Ladies, this is not freedom. Along with you, a torture is being inflicted on this society. And I don't say this in the sense of cover your head, be devout. They want to turn you into a person without an identity. Because once both the one who undresses and the one who watches the undressed lose the sense of modesty, that type of person who rejects everything to escape the torture, that's what they're trying to create. Because no matter what anyone says, the only obstacle in front of the Western world is Islam. There is no other obstacle. And there is a vast difference between me saying something to a lady here and saying something to a French woman. My war isn't over yet. Hers is. Since my war is ongoing, I have to warn. You're sitting at home. If you make jokes with profanity 3 times in front of your daughter and son, by the 4th time, it shouldn't surprise you if they start swearing back at you. Why? Because if the authority can do it, it becomes completely permissible for the subjects. So then, if ladies are saying, "We are not Muslim," then I can change the subject and ask, "Are you Turkish?" Let's go from nationalism. Throughout history, Turkish tribes never walked around naked. You cannot show me a Turkish woman who didn't wear a kaftan, even on horseback. You can't show me that from Kurdish or Arab women either. If the topic is nationalism, even racism, then you should be dressing 3 times more modestly than our women. At least 3 layers. Oh, I'm not nationalist, I'm a global citizen. Is that what you're saying? Okay. If you're living in the East, go to the West, to London, New York, Paris. Go down any street you want. You won't see this many naked women. Why? Because a woman who knows, desires to meet with elegance under certain circumstances and arouse a sense of curiosity. Let me say it in the simplest way possible. A product that's in its package is valuable, desirable, and sought after. If it's out of the package, it's a market good. So, what are you then? Look, we dropped religion, dropped nationality, dropped race. We said global citizenship. It still doesn't work. When asked, "What are you? Are you an alien?" the only answer left is this: "I don't know what I am, and I don't want to know." Okay then, from this point on, You don't get to object to anything. You won't object to anything done to you. For example, they get very angry at this statement, but you won't object to harassment. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that once you undress, someone earns the right to harass you. But what I'm saying is this. You go through these stages of undressing, right? Well, the man is going through the same stages too. And because of that, he also no longer knows what he's doing. For him, mother, father, sister, wife, friend, those values are also gone. Religion, gone. Culture, that's gone too. So if this man starts heading down the path of harassing you, it's because he's hit rock bottom alongside you in the same process. And let's look at the TV series industry, especially for Turkey as an example. To our dear ignorant directors, in all the series where you made the most sales and the most revenue worldwide, those women were the Sultan's wives and they were covered. But in the series you made domestically and got ratings with, where the woman or girl was completely naked, you couldn't sell a single one of them internationally. Shall I tell you another interesting thing? You know better. Let's look at the Oscar rankings. Which one of them was able to stand out through nudity? None, because something that is dressed is respectable. But look, I'm telling from my own country. One day, a meeting of one of Turkey's biggest brands was to be held. A product was going to be presented. While the talks were ongoing in the meeting room, the person in charge suggested a model and wanted this specific girl to come. Inside is an advertising agency, Turkey's best advertisement agency. They said, "Sir, she has no connection with the product. She doesn't have this, she doesn't have that." He said, "No, let her wear a miniskirt and come. The clients need to have their eyes pleased." Now, that same boss wouldn't dress his daughter in that outfit. The same boss is the guy selling culture on TV. What I'm trying to say is the one who puts that model on stage, who shoots that series so the girl wears that outfit, the one who sells that product in his shop, every one of them is after marketing you. Maybe you don't understand it. Maybe you haven't internalized it, but I'm the one you get mad at because I see it outright. But this is the truth. In Turkey, whether it's in journalism or in companies or wherever you go in bureaucracy, this vile mindset that demands this from you has reached this point through the compromises made, and it seems very difficult to turn back from here. Because when I stand up against it, they say, "But you're religious, and that's why you're looking at it like this." Look, this isn't this a strange thing? We have girls working in banks. She's gone to work for her bread money. There's money given to them every week, money for their hairdresser expenses. Is this girl going to sell credit, or is she going to influence the man in front of her with her femininity? And let me say this very clearly. In the human resources of all banks in Turkey, there is a note. Each bank has a type of woman. I'll reveal this here for the first time. This is given to the human resources manager by the boss. It is designed according to the sexual desires of the boss. Sometimes agencies are used. Pay attention to some banks. Most customer representatives are brunettes. The order has been given to human resources like that. Let's go with brunettes. Some are blonde, blue-eyed, etc. They are chosen one by one down to their measurements. And the human resources manager decides this while checking out those parts of the girl. Now, brothers and sisters, tell me, is religion oppressive or is this oppressive? Which one? There is one rule in religion, just one, and I will read the verse. The same rule applies to both men and women. My friend, you, with the rules that you have turned into commodification at the workplace, in the street, in sports, in the car, in choosing people, everywhere, you are the ones who have set up a system that is prone to undressing and harassment of children and others. You are in an ignorance that cannot be associated with modernism. There is no such thing like this in modernism. Have you ever seen a nude drawing done by an artist on the street? Even that guy did that disgrace one-on-one. Well, we used to call these things shameful. What will we call them now? What will we call the street now? What I'm trying to explain is this. My dear sisters, I'm not saying we're losing our religion. We've passed that. I'm saying, if you say homeland, the homeland is gone. Because your brain is gone. Naked woman equals brainless woman. Man wearing shorts and tight pants equals brainless man. Because in the noble Quran, what Allah Almighty commands me the most is think. And when there is no community left to think, to whom will I explain what is obligatory and what is permissible? The man has lost the ability to think, and I can understand this from their clothing. Look, I'm not saying this. What do we say to an uncovered woman, or what do we say to a man who hasn't yet learned how to dress? If they are aware of their sin, there is no problem. Look, he is thinking, he is aware. If an uncovered woman is aware that she is sinning, then everything is between her and Allah. And already, because that uncovered lady is able to think about this, even if you said to her, you go out like this too, and gave her money, she wouldn't. That's why she is in sin, but she is thinking. However, she has not yet succeeded against her nafs. No one can interfere with that. The area we intervene in is this. We are talking about the type of person who, having lost the ability to think, can no longer find clothes to wear and ends up naked. With this type of person, we cannot even keep our homeland standing. Therefore, as long as we continue this way in the social structure, the worst part is this. From a community that has lost the ability to think, there can be no mother or father. A family cannot come from this. Therefore, the society collapses. After that point, even if you bring in trillions, who are you going to build it with? Would you hand over your company to someone who doesn't even know how to think? No. You want someone who thinks. And when choosing this person, do you look at how they dress? Yes. Why? We don't judge people by their clothes, but we know that the qualities a person possesses are reflected in their clothing. If you no longer have clothes that reflect anything, then it means you're not thinking. Well, I can't hand over my company to an idiot. I can't hand over the people to an idiot. I can't hand over this country to an idiot. So, this isn't an insult. It's a confrontation with reality. And this truth is so interesting that Allah Almighty, knowing that man's nafs would reach this point, revealed a verse from the beginning. He said, "Friend, this isn't about intelligence or opinion. This is a very human matter. Therefore, if you cover it from the top, if you cover it from the start, you complete the process." By the way, speaking of covered women, look, now the girl has a shirt on top, jeans on the bottom, and a headscarf on top. Sister, may Allah accept it, but know that you are also from the group that cannot think, because you also don't know what you represent, either because of pressure from your father or your mother. So you wore something, but the representation hasn't occurred. Now we come to men. You cannot walk around in these pants. You cannot walk around in these shorts, my brother. Because if you wear shorts, your son will walk around in underwear, and your grandson will walk around without underwear. How much clearer can I say it? I'm at home. Is it permissible to sit in shorts? It is permissible, but you cannot sit like that, brother. Why? My dear brother, a person gains respect by respecting the people in the place they enter. Respect cannot be expected. You first show respect to those in front of you so that the community you enter will also show you respect. How can you do in your house what you don't do to people outside or to the man in the street? It's too hot, we are burning, you might say. Be patient. Just 2 months more and September is coming. Be patient, because our fathers didn't go around like that. Our grandfathers didn't go around like that. If you do, what will you say in front of your children? If you walk around in shorts, what can you say to your child? What can you say to your daughter? You can't say anything. Look, there's a verse. There's a verse of Allah Almighty in the 30th verse of Surah An-Nur. Why? You talk too much about women, they say, don't they? Allah Almighty doesn't do that. Allah Almighty says in the 30th verse of Surah An-Nur, "Tell the believing men to lower their gaze and guard their chastity. That is prayer for them. Surely Allah is all aware of what they do." So look at the subtlety. The command is given first to men, not to women. That's the first point. Allah Almighty tells the man to lower their gaze. Close it. Then he comes to the woman and says, "And tell the believing woman." And then tell the woman. First tell the men, let them correct themselves, then tell the woman. Except for their face and hands that normally appear, let them draw their head coverings over their chests. And the shape of this covering is not specified in Islam. Is it a chador, an overcoat, a cloak, this or that? It's not specified. There is no such thing. What it is that needs to be covered is clear. Then it is stated in front of whom they can be uncovered. And look, an interesting verse. Towards the end, there is a statement, "And let the woman not strike their feet together." So they shouldn't draw attention to themselves. Therefore, Allah Almighty commanded men to lower their eyes and women to cover their adornments against those who open their eyes. And this has become such a valuable thing that, throughout history, humanity has protected this. People did not wear clothes to protect themselves from heat or cold. People expressed what was within themselves. And my dear Muslim brother, throughout history, haven't Muslims been tasked with protecting and safeguarding this noble Quran, the Hadiths, and the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him? The command is from Allah Himself. And the end of the 2 verses ends as follows: "O believers, so that you may attain success." There's no other way to attain success. There's no other way to find ease. There will always be problems. And again, in Surah Al-Ahzab, verse 59, let me read that too. Allah Almighty says, O Prophet, tell your wives, your daughters, and the believing women to draw their outer garments around them when they go outside. That is more suitable so that they may be recognized as chaste women and not be abused or harmed. Allah is most forgiving, most merciful. And do you notice the society that has strayed from this mercy has brought nakedness and harshness? Now, in shopping malls, I listen, I wonder. There's this half-naked girl, and next to her, there's a boy in tight pants. They're walking side by side as a couple. Sociologically, I'm curious. How does the girl talk to the boy? Like a brute. There is not a trace of elegance. And the girl is happy with this behavior. In fact, this was one of the latest studies done in the field of sociology. The new generation of girls has started to like men who treat them poorly. Because elegance is with clothing. As one undresses, elegance disappears. Once elegance is gone, behaving with grace towards them becomes absurd. And that girl can no longer know what elegance is. She cannot be aware of that refinement. And ultimately, this has brought us to the following point. As long as it continues this way, we will not be able to find the type of person that thinks in our country. As I said, the goal is not to vilify something. We are first trying to identify a pain. In the past, we've fought for our girls to cover their heads. Now, for the sake of Allah, we are fighting to keep them from undressing. But pay attention, gentlemen, this task falls on men too. Walking around with these shorts, these type of pants, these skinny legs, these tight, this and that, is not a proper act for men either. Walking around in tight clothing is not permissible for men anyway. Young people, have style. Wherever you go, let them say, he'll wear this, he'll come like that. When he enters, he will first ask for this. Let your character be clear. Don't be a man whose actions are unpredictable. Don't be a man like everyone else. And you can't find this style by saying, what should my style be? That's why you are obliged to read, watch, listen. And for this, struggle with ideas, conscience, faith, and prayer. So let me summarize it here. If you don't have dhikr, you don't have an idea. If you don't have an idea, you don't have a style. You are obliged to turn and do the dhikr of your Lord, because this is what installs the idea in you. Only from this idea can a style emerge. So that's it from us for this week. May our Lord grant the blessing of covering properly and living with true thought under those coverings. May Allah protect you all. Take care.